Hello everyone, welcome to lecture number 11 of the course. In this lecture we're going to go over sensing and variables. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and go to new project in the top right and create a new project that I'm going to use for the entirety of this lecture. Of course, if you're following along, feel free to do the same and name it whatever you like. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to name it Sensing and Variables Demo. And we're going to go over two more categories. So there will be one more to go after this lecture. So this is the second to last lecture of learning all the functions in Scratch, and these really apply to block-based programming in general again. And once you know these, anything else you'll find in block-based programming will make sense anyway. So, like, even if there's one new function that wasn't gone over in this course, it shouldn't be a big deal because you're building up a cumulative foundational knowledge, so that it shouldn't be too much of a big deal. But I'm going to go ahead and start with sensing first, actually. And sensing and variables aren't directly related, but there's a lot of information within both. And so we're going to be spending a little bit of time on these. But without any further ado, let's just go ahead and get into it. So we have we have three touching angular operators, and each of these is basically, angular values really. And the first one is a drop-down parameter, so touching mouse pointer, touching edge, and the edge here is referring to the edge of the screen. So if we were to go to, let's get our handy if statement, and I'll wrap it with a forever and put a when green flag clicked, just so that this is indefinitely running. When touching mouse pointer, then what should we do? Change color by 25. So basically, if the sprite that is in question, which of course is sprite 1, is touching the mouse pointer, then the color effect is going to change by 25. And of course you can apply this to pretty much anything, but I'm just going to demonstrate an application for it. That is a bit fast. Let's tone that down a little bit. There we go. Now it's only changing color whenever my mouse is touching it. And it has to be the pointer too, just like that. So even if the very tip is touching it, it still counts. But yeah, let's demonstrate the edge, which is the other parameter. So I'm just going to drag it for the purpose of this tutorial, but of course it's pink and it's not changing color before touching the edge of the screen, even just the slightest pixel. Then it'll change color, and it doesn't change color if it's not. And fairly simple. Now here's where it's really interesting, and you might find yourself using this a lot. These two values right here, touching color and color, and then you input a color is touching, and then you input another color, and I will go over this initial one first, where there's only one parameter. There's not a parameter format we have yet seen, but we just go ahead and look at the three value color system that Scratch has, and go off that to input something. So let's say I want to do red. The reddest red you can do is 0, 100, 100, or 100, 100, 100 is the same thing, since red is on either side, if you see here. But I'll just go with 0, 100, 100, and let's go to our backdrop. And let's see. So what I'm going to do, just to demonstrate this, I'm going to make a line that goes down the middle of the screen. Something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to get my fill tool, convert the bitmap so it doesn't get messed up. Because for fill tool, I generally like to use bitmap for backdrops and things. We'll go with something that's like easier on the eyes. So maybe a lighter red, like that. And we'll do the equivalent, but for this. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to set our color to 0, because why not? And I'm going to put our cat right there. And so basically the way this works, you can click on here, and you can click on this little tool right here. And what that'll do is anywhere on this entire screen, if there's a color that you want, you can go ahead and just dropper it. So this is called the dropper tool, by the way. Whenever you see that little syringe looking thing, that's called a dropper. And what you can do with this is we can select a color. Let's say I want this this rose color here. Kind of duplicate this, and then let's say we want this. Again, that's just right click. And then let's say we want this. I think it's called periwinkle. Don't take my word for it though. We're gonna get this periwinkle here, and just like that. So now I have these two colors, and I'm gonna get these two if statements here. Alright, so what can we do with this? So if the sprite is touching the exact color, so it has to be 035 100, not 034 100 or not 036 100, 035 100 is what it has to be. So if it's touching this color, which is this color right here, or if it's touching 63 27 100, which is this color right here, then something will happen. But any other color, it won't, unless we specify it. So we'll just go, we'll just say move 10 steps. Or sorry, we'll go minus 10 steps of touching that color, and then move 10 steps of touching this color. So let's see if this works, and it might be a little bit laggy for it to work, actually. Yeah, it might have to add a delay, actually. Maybe not. Oh, you know what we could do? Oops. We could get rid of this line because it might be causing some interference, and we'll just see if it works any better. Just gonna do some quick troubleshooting here. It should work now. Oh, whenever it's touching both, I don't think it knows what to do. Okay. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of using move 10 steps. For things like this, it's not always as reliable. And we'll just go with glide to x 200, glide x negative 200. There we go. Now it's just kind of playing ping pong with itself. And basically what it's doing here. So as soon as it registers that it's touching this color right here, it'll go backwards to x negative 200 on the y-axis of 28. And whenever it's since it's touching this color here, the blue one, it'll go ahead and glide to x 200 on the y-axis of 28. So basically, there's a domain of 400 here, which a domain, by the way, is the difference in x values. In case you're wondering, a range is the difference in y values. So our range is, well, we don't have a range because it's just 28. It's just our range is 28. But our domain is 400 because there's 400 pixels in between negative 200 and 200. And so that's pretty much what it's doing here. And so that's just one application of touching color. And we can do some really cool things with this. So when it comes to games where you're moving a character, let's say you have some forest off to the side and you don't want the character going into the forest because it's part of the background, what you could do is, let's say it's a dark green, you could dropper that dark green to make it to where if it's touching that, it'll move the character in the opposite direction. So therefore it can never touch the backdrop. Or you could do this if you're moving a character inside a house and you don't want the character to go through the walls. You can just select the color of the walls and just make it not go there. And there's, of course, better ways to do it. You can go ahead and enter in specific coordinates it can't go to. Like, let's say the character can't move past y50 and it can't move past or x negative 100 and x 100. Something like that, just as an example. But anyways, I'm going to go over this value right here. So if color, and then there's one parameter, it's touching another parameter. So what this is it's the exact same thing, except for there has to be a color that is actually on the sprite already, that is touching an external color. So for example, we couldn't do this, or let me get my dropper tool. We could not use this color for our initial value because this color is not on our sprite. If we go to our costumes, there's that rose color is not there. But we could do this orange, white, or black because those are the colors we're working with. So we could do like black, for example. So if the border of the cat is touching something, then something will happen. And I don't know what happened there. Let's fix that. Okay, so now we could use this for the second parameter because it's basically if a internal value is touching an external color. So if a color that's part of the sprite is touching a color that is part of another sprite or a backdrop or something like that, then this will take into effect. So this statement is currently true, as you can see, because there is actually the border of the cat is or any black part of the cat really, is touching this paraweekly color here. And let's actually go ahead and do the same thing we were just doing, except for let's use this to do it. I think it was 35, right? Okay. So instead of using touching color, we're just going to use it's a specific part of the sprite that already exists. So black is already part of the sprite. So if this is touching the same colors, the same, we should get the same output, right? Let's see. Did I swap these? I bet I swapped these. Yep. Okay, well there you go. And let's say we change this so that it's no longer black. Let's say we made it red or something. Let's go to red. Now if we were able to make the whole background red, it's not, oh, it's because it's a vector. And it can be a little bit weird to work with fill tool, so I'm just going to go ahead and undo that and go to the bitmap. Yeah, it makes it a little bit blurrier, but it makes it easier to do what I'm trying to do. There we go. So notice how it stops. Not because I converted it to a bitmap or anything, but because it is no longer a black background, and because color black is not touching this color, it is not going to work. But let's say I made the outline black again. Just like that. Should work, right? I don't know why that is. But, I think it's because I converted it and then messed up a little bit. But the initial time I converted it would not have affected it. And basically, as soon as I turn it red, or as soon as I turn the outline red, since it is no longer black, it cannot, and, it cannot go ahead and, oh, it's because I have the wrong color selected. I have to select this black. Oh, yes, they use a different black for the default border. That's why. So the reason why it worked, or the reason why it didn't work whenever I had red, was because of the fact that it was not. And now, if this were color red, it would have worked, but because it was color black and it was looking for color black here in the input, and then the value right here was color red, it didn't work. So that is how you're gonna go about these three touching values here. So while we let him run around in the background, let's go ahead and go over the quick distance value as a drop down parameter again. And the reason why it's only mouse pointer right now is because there's no other sprite. But if I were to add more sprites, their names would pop up here. And it's actually the same thing with this touching value here. But this is the mouse pointer. So this is distance in pixels. So let's just say distance to mouse pointer. We'll just have them say distance to mouse pointer. Here's what we can do. So every we'll just go ahead and say every 0.1 seconds we'll print the distance to the mouse pointer from the center of the sprite. And this is in pixels, by the way. So let's see if we can get it right to 0 and find the center of the sprite. I don't know. You guys can play around with that though. Should be right about there though. And I'm just can just mess with this, and there it is. And of course there's many other applications for this, but all you need to know is the distance from either a sprite or your mouse pointer in pixels. Alright, very cool. So fairly simple now. The ask function and the answer value is really cool. You can actually go ahead and display answer on screen in those two formats right there. I usually don't do that though, but I'm just gonna go ahead and do some cool things with this real quickly. So we'll go and ask a question, and then I'll just show you guys what happens. What is 1 plus 1 equals, let's go like that. So what does 1 plus 1 equal? And we can insert something, let's say 2, because hopefully we know it's 2, right? So if I input this, well, nothing's going to happen since there's nothing after this, but I'll just do an if else, and I'll put my operator equal to, so if the answer, and keep in mind this is a string we're working with here, so for the input, you know, the input it's looking for is a string, even if it's only one character. If it's a number, it's still a string. if answer equals, oh, we don't want it to be 50, that's the default value, we'll just go with answer 2. Then say correct. And if the answer is not 2, then sorry, but that is incorrect. It's just like that. So let's just go ahead and say, oops. Let's actually put a, it doesn't matter if we do a forever. Yeah, we have to wrap it with a forever. Okay, so it doesn't continually check for answer, but let's say we put 2, correct, just like that. And let's say we put 3. Sorry, but that is incorrect. And so essentially the answer is the most recent input to the ask function. In the ask function, you can't really edit the appearance of this. It'll just come up in this box with a check mark. You can hit enter on your keyboard, or you can click this check mark to actually input whatever is in here. And again, this can be whatever I want to be. I'm just kind of smashing my keyboard here. But pretty cool. So I don't really use this a whole lot. We might actually use it later in this course for an example project. And just gonna go ahead and put these away. So here we have some really interesting ones. You're gonna use a ton, all 4 of these. You're gonna want to get used to these. So this top one here is actually quite simple. So if a certain key is pressed, then, and keep in mind these up, down, right, and left are just arrow keys, and most keyboards have them. Any means any key on your keyboard, and then the rest are A through Z and 0 through 9. So that said, we can go ahead and do, we'll just go with space, that's the default. We'll go ahead and go when clicked, and then I'm gonna put a I'm gonna put a forever and an if. So when clicked, forever if key space press, then we'll just go move, or no, actually we'll go, what should we do? Change size by 10, why not? So now by pressing space, I can change size by 10. I'm gonna set size to 100, and we'll just make a little game here. How's that sound? So we'll just go ahead and go make 4 of these conditionals, and I'll do one for up, down, left, and right. So we'll go with change x by, or sorry, for up and down it would be y, right? So we'll go change y by 10 and change y by -10 for down. For right, we'd just be changing x by 10, and then for left, we'd be changing by -10. And if you want to move in increments of 10 pixels like me, then you can do that, but you can also do a smaller, larger value, whatever you want. And we'll actually expand on what we're doing here in just a moment. And I'm actually going to go ahead and clear up my backdrop just a little bit. Remember, I can clear or have a transparent color by clicking this little white square with a line through it. And just like that, my backdrop's clear. I'm going to go back to my code for my sprite here, and we'll just go and see how this works. So now I'm using my arrow keys to control where the cat goes. I can also go diagonally. And you might be wondering what the advantage of this is compared to, where is it? In events, there is this thing called when, and then whatever key press, so we can go when up, when down. I'll just do when up. I'm just actually going to replicate this, but use these instead of the conditionals inside a forever loop. So I'll just go ahead and add in all my functions. Okay. And I'm just going to get rid of this. Okay, so the reason why this isn't as good is because I can't go diagonal because it can only take input from one at the same time. So I'm holding both down and right now, and I'm holding both down and left right now, but I'm not going diagonal. So why is that? It's only taking input from one at a time, and that's why you're going to want to use these conditionals inside a forever loop, because it can take input from several at the same time. And if you're using all 4 at the same time, it won't do anything because it's just going in all directions at the same time and therefore staying in place since it cancels out. And that's just because these are all by the same increment of 10 pixels. But I can go diagonal, I can go left, right, up, down, wherever I want to go. Let's go ahead and try up, down, just why not? Or sorry, mouse down, and that just means if the mouse is down. So if you're clicking with the left mouse button, just like that, I can click and hold or just click normal. And usually we use this for clicking and holding though, but You can use it for whichever you want. You can just put like a 0.1 second delay and then make it to where it's just individual clicks. Um, Actually, let's do some more stuff with this little cat we had moving around, just real quick. Oops. We want key up pressed. Okay. So what can we do with this? Well, we can go. We can go ahead and animate it. So what we can do for that is we can go ahead and if any of these are pressed. And actually, what would be a more efficient way to do this is using our OR operator, and I'll show you what I'm about to do here. I'm only going to use one conditional, but instead I'm just going to go up, down, right, or left. Oops. Let's make sure we can fit all those there. Alright. So if any of these four are pressed, then what we can do is we can go ahead and change, or actually a better way to do this would be next costume, so it just continually cycles through them. And we want it to default at costume 1. And then we also want it to be that whenever we start our project. Just like that. So now I have these 3 scripts right here. This one is for animation, this one is for movement, and this one is to set the costume to costume 1 whenever I start the project. Okay, looks like this is not working, so let's solve it. If key up arrow pressed or key down arrow pressed or key. Oh, it's because this is in the wrong spot. That's why. Here we go. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put this in next costume. And yeah. Just like that. Very cool. So I'm actually gonna do an if else for this. Just so that it'll default back at costume 1 whenever it's not running. So it'll cycle whenever any of the up, down, left, or right keys are pressed, and then it'll just stay at costume 1 or the standing costume whenever they aren't pressed, is what this does. So I'll just get rid of this. Very cool. Well, let's take this to the next level. What if we took a script like this, but only mess with left or right? And the reason why is because we can actually change the direction it's facing. So let's actually go ahead and set our, where is it? Set rotation style to left, right. And this is what I like to call the declaration script because we're defining the default values for certain functions. So, for example, I'm setting my rotation style and setting my starting costume here. So that's pretty cool. And I'll just go ahead and go left, right. And I want it to be 90 degrees by default as well. But we can go ahead and get rid of these. So we're going to go ahead and point this way. Or this way. Am I doing this right? Let's see. Okay. Yes, I am. Okay. Oh, I know what the problem is. I'm not thinking this through. So we can have 2 conditionals. I'll go 1 for if right key pressed and 1 for left key pressed. And what I'm doing here is if the right key is pressed, we want him to face right. If the left key is pressed, we want him to face left. So I'll just go ahead and 90 degrees is right and negative 90 degrees is left. And of course, this has to do with our rotation style because there's only 2 directions we can face whenever our rotation style is set to left, right, rather than the default all around. So now if we're going left, we're facing this way. If we're going right, we're facing this way. And we can animate like this. I'm actually going to go ahead and put a little bit of a delay, I'm thinking, between these costumes. And maybe make our increments a little bit less drastic. And see if this just helps improve the quality, and something you just have to troubleshoot a little bit. Could be a little bit faster, I suppose. Yeah, I'm just gonna get rid of the delay. Okay, well, it could be better, but I'm not great with art or animation, but Again, just letting the computer do most of the work here, but still, very cool. And we can keep doing more and more stuff. We can add stuff to the background and be like, hey, if it's touching this color, you can't go there. Or if it's touching the edge of the screen, again, we can use our drop-down parameter, and if it's touching the edge, we'll do something. Cool things like that. Let's talk about mouse X and mouse Y. So, all this is, actually going to go ahead and just demonstrate this real quickly with a couple of forevers here. It'll just refresh every 100 milliseconds or 0.1 seconds. And we'll go ahead and say mouse X and mouse Y. Now, mouse X is the value of the mouse pointer and mouse pointer's location in pixels, and X value in pixels, sorry. And the mouse Y is the mouse pointer's Y value in pixels. So we'll just go ahead and test this out. So our mouse pointer is at actually, there's a better way to do this. I apologize. I'll use the join operator for this. We'll refresh this every 1 second. Okay, here's what we can do. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say that we're gonna need about 4 of these. And where's our mouse Y? Here it is. Mouse X, and I actually want my mouse X to be the first one. Then we'll just go ahead and go mouse Y. Again, join operators are very important. And we'll do something like that. I wasn't thinking it through the first time. I'll put a space there. Okay. So, mouse X, so, okay, actually, here's what we can do. Alright, so the X value of our mouse is 30 and the Y value is 10. If we move it down, the Y value is going to decrease. If we move it to the left, the X value is going to decrease and so on. So right now we're at Y at 170, X negative 108. X value is going to get pretty low. Let's make our X value really big by going right. Let's make our Y value really low by going down. And things like that. So you can just kind of mess around to see the update. There's better ways to run the script. I just really want to demonstrate. And of course, there's really practical applications, as you'll see, for actually applying these values. Let's talk about drag mode for a moment. Drag mode basically means it's draggable or not draggable in the editor. So we'll just go ahead and say not draggable. And, oh, sorry. That is within the program, actually. So if we actually make it full screen, because you can't drag sprites whenever it's full screen. So boom, not draggable. But if it were draggable, then, well, we could drag it around. So just like that. And you're almost never going to be using that, so don't worry about it. I'm not going to spend too much time on it at all because it's just not something we're going to use. Loudness should be -1, and I believe the unit is decibels again. Loudness should be -1 whenever no mic is connected, but if you want to connect your mic either through your offline editor or through your browser, whichever you're choosing to follow along with this course. And this is basically just displays the ongoing measure of loudness through the mic if applicable. So timer, of course, I'm going to check this box. I'll show the timer. Every time the project is started, it'll start a new timer and it'll reset it as soon as the project is started again. And it just pretty much resets it. And it'll go to the 3rd decimal place or the 1000th place. We can also reset the timer using a function. Notice how it reset there. Let's do it again. Just like that. So we can reset the timer without starting the project. But I do think it's a better idea to go ahead and mess with the timer once you're with variables instead of, actually, how about I'll demonstrate a variable timer in this episode. I'm actually going to go ahead and delete all my blocks because I don't need them. And I just don't want it to be too cluttered for you guys. This is just a value that is very versatile. We can use it for our backdrop number, our backdrop name, the volume of this sprite specifically, or the and we'll get to variables in just a moment in this lecture actually. And then this is Upstage. So don't worry about the Upstage, but we can just go ahead and mess with the certain values here. So like for example, we could go ahead and go if backdrop number of stage equals 1, or if backdrop name of stage equals backdrop 1, or if volume equals 100, and I'm not going to demonstrate the variables because we haven't gone there yet, but just as an example, you can plug that in for a lot of things. It's very versatile, but I still don't find myself using it too much for some reason. This right here, we can display the current year, or we can make a drop-down parameter, go ahead and display current month, and actually we have to change it here for it to current month. Now, of course, is most likely going to be different for you, as you are taking the course at a different time than I am recording it. We can go ahead and output. Oh, I guess I have to refresh all these. But yeah, just a cool thing there. So this is just continually counting, whether the program's running or not. Just gonna go back and turn all these off. Yeah, the date is in the format of the actual day. So and then also we can do day a week, which will just be like a string. Actually, I think all these are string values, but it still displays them as numbers, but that's far from the point. So day week 4, which for me is Wednesday. So 1 is Sunday and 7 is Saturday. So in case you're wondering which day is which number, 1 is Sunday and uh 7 is Saturday. So day since 2000 is literally the day since 10,000 2000. It's kind of just a fun thing to play around with. I'm not sure about how many practical applications there are. I'm sure you can find some. But it's just a fun thing. It's also good for testing, let's say the save function. And then boom, 7,229.14 days since 2000. Very cool. Oops. Okay, so let's go back to sensing. Just got one more here in username. This is the username of the user running the project. We can show it here. Udemy Scratch Course is my username, as you can see right there. And right there. 2 outputs for it. We don't have to display it on screen. If you ever have this function inside your program, and you choose to share your project, whenever other people click on your project, it'll say, this project detects username, are you sure you want to continue? And it'll prompt people to opt out or use the project with their username before they can use it or before they can run the project. So just a heads up, if you intend on going ahead and making a project that uses this, that's fine. Just keep in mind that anyone who uses your project, if it's shared, is going to be notified that this is inside your project. So, let's say they have parental restrictions that they can't have a project that uses the username function or something, or username value or something like that, then that could be a problem. But just something to know there. Now, let's talk about variables. And we're also going to talk about lists. But don't worry, because lists are not, how do I say it? Lists are similar, and they're actually really simple, and they kind of go with it, and I just kind of have to do it all at once, so for this really click together. So we have my variable here, okay, and we can show it, and of course there's different outputs for it. This variables actually have sliders as well, so there's 3 outputs for all the variables. And all projects include my variable by default, and of course you can remove it with delete. You can also rename it, and the default value of variables whenever you start a program is always 0. So if we can also show it like this and hide it by doing the same thing. And that's literally half the function right there. The other 2 are set and change. But before we even go into this, what are variables? Well, variables are either public, so applicable to all classes and backdrops, or sorry, applicable to all sprites and the stage, or applicable to a certain sprite or just a stage or something like that, if it's private. And in fact, if I go make a variable, it'll prompt me for all sprites or for this sprite only. So if we want it to be able to be used everywhere in the project, we'll have to go for all sprites. If we want it to be used just for this sprite, we can go ahead and click here. So it's basically a private or public variable. Something you're going to need to know for text-based programming. You need to know the concept of. So variable is just a number. It can't be a letter. It can't be a string of letters. It has to be a number. And basically, that number stores. That number is going to store a value, and we can set it to 0 as default, and if something happens if it's 1, if something happens if it's 2, we can do whatever we want with it. It's very versatile. We can make it count and make a timer with it. I'll actually do that first. I'll just go when clicked, set it to 0 forever. Sorry. And here's where it gets really interesting. Variables can not only be used in functions to change the value, they can also be used as values. So I'm actually going to use my handy join operator here to print out a string that uses this variable as well. I'll just say this program has been running for, and I'm actually going to paste space there because I need another join, as I want to use the word seconds after this. Just like this. Oops. Something like this. And also do another script that every 1 second uh, that my variable increases by 1. Of course, I'm actually going to rename this to timer just to make it a little bit less confusing. I'll just name it custom timer. We can also make this count in milliseconds. We can make it count in seconds. We can make it count in whatever we want. Let's go ahead and go like this and put a when green flag clicked. Boom. Let me, I forgot to put a, wait 1 second there. Boom. This program has been running for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds. Just so on, I'll just keep counting. Of course, we can do, what's so cool about custom timers is we can do any, it's very versatile where we can apply the value, and also, we can go ahead and make it in any measure we want. So we can do a tenth of a second, we can do a thousandth of a second, we can do increments of 10 seconds, and that's just why variable timers are generally preferred. You can just change a lot with how they work. And we're going to be using variables so much in the future of this course, so I mean, if this it's going to be expanded on so much, I'm just going to show you guys the concept, and that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it for this lecture. I get talk all day and all night for 7 days straight about variables, but really, after this, it's just the applications of them. You just have to understand it, and we'll just continue to reinforce it. So, I'll just name a list called test array. Why am I calling it array? Because in pretty much everywhere except block-based programming, lists are called arrays. Variables are still called variables or var for short, but lists are not called lists outside of Scratch or really block-based programming. They're called arrays, so it's good to know that these are just the same thing as an array so you don't get super confused. And arrays are strings, so it has to be a string. So there is nothing we can mess around with this. We can also hide this list or show it, and there's only one kind of output it can be, which is this right here. We can resize it with this little menu looking thing in the bottom right. With this right here, we can just add a string, so let's say test. We can also remove them. Of course, this is only in the editor. If it was like actually running from the project page, I'll show you the project page in the next lecture. Then you wouldn't be able to do that. You wouldn't be able to edit the list externally. But I just go fake launch sequence. This is good for loading screens. It can show you everything that's being done as it happens. If your project takes a while to load, it could be like loading sprites or things like that. And I can go ahead and go v1.0 and I don't know, let's just say compiling, and you can just go ahead and make this whatever you want. You can make it a launch sequence again. You can make it pretty much you can make it a list of words. You can make it a list of numbers even. It can be useful for numbers. We can also delete specific values from it. So let's say there's thing, or sorry, I'm gonna add some random words to it just so we can distinguish them. Apple, banana, pineapple, mango, and a melon. Oops, can't spell today. Alright, so we can delete a specific number. So notice how all these are numbered. And it's actually in the order we made them. So apple's 1, banana's 2, pineapple's 3, and mango's 4, and melon's 5. So let's delete pineapple. We can just go delete 3. And then boom. And then the numbers will automatically readjust themselves. Now we can delete all of it. We can also insert something in a specific row. Or sorry, yeah, a specific row. And let's just go ahead and add our stuff back. It's actually probably quicker to do it like this. What was it? Apple, banana, pineapple, mango, and melon. Alright, so also this is a drop down, so if we have we can always rename and delete from here. If we had more lists, we can choose what we want to delete from. Same with all of these. We just select the list that we want to work with, or we want the function to apply to. So we can also insert. Let's say I want Because if I just go add, if I use my add function, I'll just add right after melon. Let's say I want to add lemon between pineapple and mango. Well, what I can do, I can go lemon at line 3. Oh, sorry, this puts it at whatever line is specified here. If we want to have lemon, let's actually delete 3 then. Okay. If we want to have lemon between pineapple and mango, we put it at line 4, so it'll push mango up 1, and it also pushed melon up 1 because mango is pushed up 1, and then now it's inserted between them. And again, this is the insert function, so it's kind of intuitively named there. Now we can replace an item with something. So let's replace item. Let's say I don't want pineapple to be pineapple anymore. Let's say I want pineapple to be pineapple smoothie. I don't know why. Well, we'll just do that for demonstration purposes. And then of course, boom. Instead of deleting it and adding it separately, we can just replace all in one. So if you're wanting to delete a specific row and add it with something else, instead you can just use replace. So that's a useful thing. We also have some values here. Real quickly, I'll go over the other two functions, just show and hide. We can hide this list or show it. Of course, they work the exact same if they're hidden. Of course, it helps you visualize and build them better. If it's visualized, it just really depends on what you're doing with them. And we have these three values here. We also have an angular value right here. We'll go over all of these. So if it contains something, we can just use this in a conditional statement. If test array contains banana, we could maybe name this something more practical, like if shopping list. Actually, let's do that. Let's rename this shopping list. And then we'll just make our program see what's on the shopping list. So forever if shopping list contains banana, then something happens. And then if shopping list contains melon, then something happens. And then if else, then, and you know, you can mess around with it. You can make your own little shopping list project if you wanted to. You could even make it to where, just with what we learned in this lecture, we can make it to where it asks for groceries, adds the groceries, because you can just use the answer values input. You can insert, or sorry, you can go ahead and add the answer to the shopping list. Let's say you typed in banana, it'll add banana to here, and then, you know, if it contains something, then you can, you know, you can go all sorts of places with that. If you want to make a little fun practice idea, and maybe a little bit of a challenge program, make a little shopping list program, and pretty much format it however you want. Just as long as you're learning, it almost doesn't really matter what you're working on, as long as you're learning and enjoying the process of learning. So we can use this to get the string value from a row number of the list. So we have shopping list selected. Let's say what's on row 3. We know it's pineapple smoothie, and that's the value we're going to get back in string format. So if we're talking about 2, we're going to get it banana because banana is number 2, and so on. And we can just plug this in to an operator or whatever we need. And item number of, if we're trying to get the item number from strings, so if we want to know what the, let's say we have a list that's 1,000 lines long, but we know that lemon's on the list, and we want to know the row number, we can just grab the row number, and of course we know it's 4 since we have a small list here, but we can, that's a really useful way to do operations like that. And length of is the length in rows, so it should be 6, and just like that, length in rows. Okay, and of course we can get length of string here using these operators, but we're talking about length of row whenever we're referring to length, and that's also why it's good to know color coding whenever it comes to this. But anyways, shopping, if shopping list contains, I kind of went over this, but basically if an array, and I say if, but this doesn't have to just be in conditional statements, so basically it's just a value of whether, and it's just going to give a boolean returns a true or false. And it is true that it contains banana, but if it contains a certain string as your parameter here, then it's just going to go ahead and give you a true or false value. So you can use however you'd like. I'm just going to go ahead and click that checkbox so it's not showing anymore, and there is list for you. So we went over variables, we went over lists, and we went over sensing. Okay, so in this following lecture, we're going to go over blocks or custom blocks or custom scripts. So another way to put it. And with those custom scripts, we're going to do some really cool things. And it'll be a shorter one as we're just going over the concept there. After that, we'll work on some really cool projects and just kind of jump into them. And there is actually a lot we're going to do more with variables, so I look forward to doing that. I was debating over what to include regarding variables in this lecture, but I think it'll work out because if you guys choose to continue on after this section of the course and just go ahead and work on the projects, you will learn a lot more and just reinforce all these concepts, because I don't expect you to remember all this stuff first time as well, what all these functions do, even if you've been practicing outside of the course, which I do recommend you do, but of course it's not required. And even if you have been doing that, I don't expect you to remember them all. We're just going to keep reinforcing it cumulatively with these projects that we're about to get into. But again, there's still one more lecture before we do that, and I really look forward to seeing you guys there in lecture number 12.